Hi, good morning. I'm out here getting ready to water the garden and just kind of got some thoughts for today. First of all, to get the water, come on, there we go. We kind of run the water for a little bit to get any of the hot water out of the hose. Then we do watering. So, current events, got a lot of political things going on, people getting all excited one way or another. You know, a lot of commentaries going on social media. You know, you should vote for this person, you should vote for this person. You know, this actor says if you do this, or this actor says if you do this. And here's my get on it. Please do some real research on what's going on in the world. Do not rely on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, BC. They are selling you an agenda. Just telling you, most of the stuff I initially see from any of those panduits, if you do any sort of research, you can kind of find out that they weren't really honest with you. And understand, propaganda is not just what you say, but it's how you say it and what you don't say. Like I said, one of my favorite radio hosts was Paul Harvey. And he always had now for the rest of the story. All right, and his usually were pretty good stories, but the thing of it is the conclusion was kind of different than what the story started out with, and that's what's happening these days. You know, we're forgetting about the basics. All right, and the basics may be different from everybody else, but here's my basics: the ability to have a roof over my head, the ability to feed myself and my family, and the ability to sit there and travel to work and back into the stores and that. Those are my basic, and to heat the house, which falls under having a roof over your head. Those are the basics. All right. Without those, life gets really difficult, really quick. And the problem is we have a lot of people being very politically active that are not responsible for those things. They are at an age or position where they are relying on somebody else to provide that roof over the head, to provide that food on the table, to provide the fuel in their vehicle for the most part. So I'm sorry, kiddos, but you're not living in the real world. Right? That's not how the real world works. And so when somebody says, well, hey, I got this thing where you can have this for free all the time. All right. Well, that sounds really good to you. The problem is the world doesn't work that way. Nothing is free. Somebody has to sit there and earn it. So what's the next thing to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about, you know, income inequality. Well, no kidding. All right. A lot of people make more money than I do. But if you put the things to the world in the world stage, and you take what America has and you put it to the world, all right, even the person who makes minimum wage is in the top 10% bracket in the world. All right. Not that anybody's happy making minimum wage, but minimum wage jobs are generally for a starter job. And learn how you get in the workforce. Something to do while you're in college, something to do while you're in school, you know, something to do as a second job, you know, or if you're in a household where you're lucky enough to have one big wage earner, it's to supplement the earner. That's really what those jobs are for. All right. I would dissuade people from going to college anymore, or if you are going to go to college, get a degree that's actually going to make you money. What degrees are those? Well, they're going to be technical degrees. All right. The world runs on technology. You know, something to do with computers, something to do with fixing machines. You know, even colleges have shop classes. You know, something that's going to provide you an income. I'm sorry, kiddos, but having a degree in social studies of the Far East in the 1600s, The best thing you're going to do is get a teaching job. And there's nothing wrong with teaching jobs. My wife's a teacher. While we're going and teaching, let's talk about that. All right. When I was in school, things were a little different than they are now. First of all, there was discipline. And if you weren't disciplined, you got disciplined right in school. They don't do that anymore. And I'm going to blame the parents. Really am. Your little prince and princess, it's not the people you thought they were. All right. You didn't give them any discipline in the household, and you're wondering why they're having problems at school because you didn't give them the basic skills. All right. There are actions and reactions to your behavior. All right. You had poor behavior, there's actions in the real world. And to try to remove them from the educational system is not going to set up, right, this is my opinion, is not going to set people up for the real world. When I say the real world is when you get out of college and you actually move out of mommy and daddy's house and you got to support yourself. You are now in the real world. All right. Otherwise, you're still trying to develop. That's all there's to it. And hopefully you're developing. The problem is I read a book by Roger Zanley, Chronicles of Amber. And in one of those, he says something that makes so much sense now. It didn't before, but boy, it sure does now. All right, now we're talking about a fictional universe, and it was a very interesting book, and I like the books, always have. But they basically go to another world where they recruit an army, and he says, there was about 100,000 of them foolish enough to sign up with us, even though generation before we took out the cream of their mankind crop for the same thing. But they said they had the abilities and the thought process of your average college student. He says, don't take it wrong, college students, but you are too easily abused and used by people such as us. And what are those people? People of wealth and power. Elon Musk made a comment, and he might have repeated it from somebody else, but it made awful sense. And this is coming from somebody who was in the military. He says, young men go to war and fight other young men they don't know. For old men who they do know each other. So basically, we're fighting other young men and killing other young men over what old men that know each other are having an argument about. Never really looked at it that way, but if you think about it, that's how most of it was caused. Most of the wars were caused by the elites. They have an issue with other elites that they knew and probably were related to. And that's kind of puts things in perspective. And that's what I got to say is you're always growing, you're always learning. I mean, I'm in my 60s and I'm still changing my opinions on what's going on in the world. Why? Because I research. All right, I don't rely on what's being fed to me. And the problem is you young men and women are falling for propaganda in just a huge amount. It's terrible. I mean, I know people personally that fall for this, and why they fall for it is they don't do any independent research. They do zero. And I had one said, "Well, I don't have to do any research. I know what's going on." Well, how do you know what's going on if you're not researching it? Well, I lived in that area. Okay, well, I live in this area. I don't know everything that's going on in this town. All right, I would have to research that. Just because you happen to live on the block don't mean you know what the neighbor 2 doors down is doing. And I thought that was just an incredible reflection on some of the problems here. We look at something on the internet, we hear something on the news that they tell us, well, this is what you should think about it, and we agree with it. We don't sit there and challenge it. We'll challenge other things, we won't challenge that. What's the famous saying? Follow the science. Okay. Well, I'm a biochemist. I'll tell you how science works. We observe something. We ask some questions about what we observed. We come up with some ideas why we're observing it. We do lots of observations and we use mathematical equations to try to make some sense of it. And then we draw a conclusion. Not saying that conclusion's right, but we draw a conclusion based on observations and a lot of studying and a lot of math. And then we test those observations. All right, there's always theory, there's always the field test, and then there's reality. And guess what, boys and girls? The three of them rarely agree with each other. Which is the one that's true? Well, that's called reality. All right, so over the last 4 years, we've had a lot of misinformation be spread out there as the gospel. All right, you don't want to get banned or get in trouble on YouTube, but folks, it's not a vaccine. It never was, and it never worked. All right, they said, well, this will prevent. It didn't. Well, this will reduce. It didn't. Well, this will help you fight. It didn't. It didn't do anything. And then, of course, with any vaccines, there are side effects. Did it have some? Yeah, every. It's not a vaccine. It was gene therapy. But everybody was follow the science. Follow the science. Well, number one, there was no science behind it. All right, the word experimental kind of came to mind. So there's no science behind it. You are the science. You are the observations. We're going to sit there and give it to a lot of people and see what happens. And that's what we did. All right, we were given a lot of misinformation, and when a lot of information was withheld. All right, your best advice to fight that Charlie 19: wash your hands and take vitamins and minerals. Vitamin C, zinc, vitamin D3, take magnesium to absorb the D3. All right, wipe down counters. Do those things your mom told you to do. Wash your hands before you come to dinner. All right, that counter dirty, wipe that down. Well, they really didn't talk about that. What they wanted to do is, well, we have this shot, and it's going to fix everything. Well, it didn't, and they don't. But the people that did sit there and change their diets and eat healthier and finally started washing their hands like, my mom was trying to get me to do for the last 50 years, did. And now how they treat it like the common cold. All right, take 2 aspirin, call me in the morning. All right, so you got to sit there and learn from the past. You got to remember what politicians did. You got to remember what politicians promised and didn't fulfill. And you got to stop falling for the constant propaganda rhetoric that is not based on any facts. All right, and they can all be easily refuted. Just a couple minutes of research. When I say a couple minutes, a lot of times 30 seconds, and you've got your answer. That people won't do. And it's not just in politics, it's in a lot of things. All right. I get a lot of comments that, oh, those are fake weights, John. Those are not real weights. You're old. There's no way you can be that strong. I don't care that you worked out for 50 years. It's just not possible. But they could have just went to my openpowerlifting.org and seen, oh, he does this. But no, it's easier just to make a comment than it is to actually do some research. So, folks, here in the States, we've got I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm not going to tell you why you should vote for a certain person or another. All I'm going to say is please do some real research before you make that decision. Don't vote just because you're on a straight ticket. Actually look at what the person has done in the past and what they have not done. And when they say, oh, this person's going to do this, this, and this, and they're in that position before and they didn't, they're lying to you. Not being lied to. All right, and with that, that's my monthly rant. Although I won't get in too much trouble for it. Remember, just go outside, enjoy yourself. It's the weekend. Enjoy your weekend.